Welcome back to Neural Intel. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating technical landscape of video generation. You sent over a really compelling research paper from Archef, Improving Video Generation with Human Feedback. And it looks like we're going to unpack some of the core, engineering challenges in this rapidly evolving field.
Absolutely. This paper gets right into the technical intricacies of how we can build video generation systems that not only produce visually impressive results, but also, importantly, align with what users actually want. It's about moving beyond just like technical feasibility to real-world usability and preference.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is kind of twofold. First, we need to understand the fundamental technical bottlenecks that are still limiting current video generation technologies. And second, we're going to explore the innovative technical approaches this research proposes to tackle one of the biggest challenges, incorporating nuanced human preferences into these complex systems. Okay, so let's start by laying the groundwork. What are the key persistent technical challenges in video generation that this paper identifies, even with all the remarkable progress we've seen lately?
Yeah, what's technically interesting here is that while we've seen incredible advancements in generating realistic visuals and, somewhat coherent motion, the paper highlights that we're still facing some fundamental engineering hurdles. These include issues like instability in the generated motion,
Right.
that jittery or unnatural feel
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah, definitely seen that.
Then there's the challenge of the video content not perfectly matching the initial text prompt. Maybe the details are off or the overall scene isn't quite right. We also still see cases where the overall visual quality isn't entirely satisfactory, perhaps with like lingering artifacts or a lack of crispness. And crucially for this research, current models don't always consistently produce videos that humans actually prefer.
Right. We've all encountered those examples where something just feels off, even if you can't immediately put your finger on why. Now, the paper draws a contrast with the significant progress made in language modeling and image generation, where learning from human preferences has been, well, a game changer. Why is applying the seemingly similar idea to video generation proving to be so much more technically complex?
Well, if we think about the underlying engineering obstacles, a couple of major areas stand out. Firstly, we face a significant data scarcity problem. We just don't yet have the large-scale, high-quality datasets that explicitly capture the subtleties of human video preferences.
Yeah.
The paper discusses some initial attempts to create such datasets, but these often relied on, frankly, lower-quality videos generated by older models,
Ah,
which
right.
brings its own set of technical limitations, as we'll get into. Secondly, the internal architecture, the model mechanisms, as the paper calls them, of these cutting-edge video generation systems, they present unique challenges when we try to integrate preference learning techniques developed for other modalities.
Okay, let's zoom in on that data bottleneck then. The paper emphasizes the limitations of these existing video preference data sets. What are the specific technical shortcomings of these earlier efforts to collect human feedback on video?
Yeah, the crucial point here is that these early data sets, while pioneering, were largely built using videos created by older, often open source generation models. Technically, this means the videos themselves frequently exhibited lower visual fidelity, noticeable artifacts, and were typically quite short in duration. Think about the kinds of visual imperfections and limited complexity common in earlier AI-generated content.
And why does this matter so much when we're trying to train these state-of-the-art video diffusion models or VDMs? It sounds like the capabilities of the models have simply outpaced the data we have to guide them, like trying to train a sophisticated algorithm on outdated information.
That's a great analogy, yeah. The core issue is the growing chasm between the quality of videos that modern VDMs can produce and the quality of the videos in these older preference datasets. Consequently, the preferences learned from evaluating those earlier, less sophisticated videos might not accurately reflect what humans valued in the high-resolution, temporally coherent videos that current models are capable of generating. The training signal we get from that older data might just not be nuanced or relevant enough for the advanced capabilities of today's models.
That makes perfect sense. The models have leveled up, but our feedback mechanism is still operating on an older standard, so to speak. Now let's tackle this model mechanism challenge. The paper notes that many current video generation models employ rectified flow and predict velocity rather than the noise prediction common in some image generation methods. How does this fundamental architectural difference create technical hurdles for adapting existing alignment techniques like DPO and RWR?
Right? This is where the underlying mathematical framework becomes really important. Methods like DPO and RWR were initially designed and rigorously tested, primarily with diffusion-based models, which operate by iteratively adding and then removing noise to generate the final output. When you shift to flow-based models that directly predict the velocity field of the video, it introduces new technical complexities in how these alignment algorithms can effectively interact with the model's internal representations. For example, as the paper points out, initial attempts to directly apply DPO to flow-based image generation actually resulted in worse performance compared to models that hadn't undergone any alignment.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just plug and play.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So it's not a straightforward case of applying a successful technique from one type of model to another. The fundamental differences in how they operate under the hood necessitate careful adaptation.
Okay, so recognizing these significant challenges, both the limitations in preference data and the architectural differences in video generation models, the researchers in this paper introduced a new, large-scale, human-labeled video generation preference dataset. Can you walk us through the key technical specifications and the defining characteristics of this new dataset? What makes it different?
What's technically significant here is the sheer scale and the explicit focus on contemporary video generation models. They've compiled a dataset containing 182,000 human-labeled comparisons between video triplets. Crucially, this data was gathered by evaluating outputs from 12 different video generation models, many of which represent the current state-of-the-art in the field. Furthermore, their annotation process went beyond just a simple binary preference. They captured preferences across three distinct dimensions: visual quality, VQ, motion quality, MQ, and text alignment, TA.
Ah, okay, so multiple aspects.
Exactly. This multifaceted approach to preference annotation is a substantial advancement.
And to effectively utilize this more comprehensive preference data, they also developed a multidimensional video reward model. What's the underlying technical rationale for breaking down the reward into these separate dimensions rather than using, say, a single overall preference score?
Well, the technical reasoning is quite robust. Human evaluations of video are rarely based on a single monolithic judgment of quality, right? We inherently consider different aspects: how visually appealing it is, how fluid and believable the motion appears, and how accurately it reflects the initial text prompt. So by designing a reward model that outputs individual scores for visual quality, motion quality, and text alignment, you gain a much finer-grained understanding of what aspects of the generated video are preferred or not. This allows for more targeted feedback to the video generation model during the training process, potentially leading to more effective improvements in specific areas.
It sounds like a much more precise way to guide the models rather than just saying this is good or this is bad. Now, to rigorously evaluate the effectiveness of these new reward models, the researchers created a benchmark called VideoGen Reward Bench. What makes this benchmark technically relevant for assessing the performance of modern VDMs?
Right, VideoGen Reward Bench is specifically engineered to overcome the shortcomings of older evaluation methods. It's built upon a foundation of prompt video pairs sourced from VideoGen Evolve, which itself features a diverse range of prompts and videos generated by current, high-performing video diffusion models.
Okay.
By annotating 26,500 of these video pairs with human preference labels, VideoGen Reward Bench provides a much more challenging and pertinent testing ground for assessing how well reward models can evaluate the quality and alignment of videos produced by the latest generation of models. Essentially, it tests the reward models on the very type of videos they are ultimately intended to assess.
Okay, so they've established this richer preference data set and a more relevant benchmark. Now, let's delve into the technical paradigms they explored for training these reward models using the collected human annotations. The paper discusses two primary approaches: pointwise regression and pairwise comparisons. Could you explain the core technical objective of pointwise regression in this context?
Sure. In the context of training reward models, pointwise regression aims to directly map a given video to a scalar reward score based on human annotations. So if a human annotator assigns a video a score of, say, 4 out of 5 for motion quality, the regression model is trained to predict a value close to 4 when it's presented with that same video. The technical goal is basically to learn a function that accurately predicts the absolute quality or preference score assigned by humans to individual videos.
Got it. And the second major approach is pairwise comparisons, notably using the Bradley-Terry or BT loss. Why is this method of modeling relative preferences technically compelling for video reward modeling, especially given that the paper indicates it hasn't been extensively explored in this domain?
What makes pairwise comparison, and the Bradley-Terry model in particular, technically interesting, is its focus on learning the relative likelihood of one video being preferred over another, rather than predicting absolute scores. Instead of trying to pinpoint an exact quality score for each video, you're learning the underlying preference strength, such that the model can predict which video a human would choose between any two given options.
Ah, okay. More like ranking.
Sort of, yeah. This could be a more robust way to capture subjective human preferences, as people are often better at making relative judgments, I like this one more, than assigning absolute ratings. The BT loss function provides a mathematical framework for modeling the probability of one video being preferred over another based on these learned preference strengths. The fact that it's relatively underexplored for video reward models presents a promising avenue for potentially more effective preference learning.
The paper also mentions some methodologies that leverage vision language models, or VLMs, as evaluators. How does this technically work? It sounds like they're training one AI to judge the output of another.
That's a concise way to put it, yeah. Technically, these methods involve taking a pre-trained VLM, a model that has learned to understand the relationships between visual content and textual descriptions, and fine-tuning it with specific instructions to act as a preference judge. You essentially train the VLM to examine a video and its corresponding prompt, and then generate a textual output indicating a preference or a quality score. The underlying idea is that these large-scale VLMs have acquired a significant amount of knowledge about visual quality, semantic alignment, and even potentially human aesthetic preferences during their extensive pre-training. So they can potentially serve as a reasonable automated proxy for human evaluation, particularly if they are effectively instructed on how to perform the judgment task.
It's fascinating how they're exploring ways to automate this inherently subjective process. Now, the paper highlights that the majority of existing video reward models have been trained on data generated by older models. What are the technical implications of this limitation when trying to evaluate and guide the training of these newer, much more advanced video generators?
Well, as we touched upon earlier with the data bottleneck for preference learning itself, reward models trained primarily on videos from older, less capable models are likely to have a limited understanding of the quality characteristics exhibited by modern VDMs. These older reward models might be overly sensitive to specific types of artifacts that are no longer prevalent in state-of-the-art outputs. Or they might fail to adequately appreciate the significant improvements in motion realism and prompt adherence that newer models have achieved. Essentially, their learned concept of video quality is based on a less advanced stage of video generation technology, making them potentially unreliable for evaluating and guiding the latest breakthroughs.
Right, like trying to use a ruler calibrated for millimeters to measure something requiring micrometer precision, the tool just isn't sensitive enough. Okay, let's shift gears and discuss alignment techniques. Drawing parallels with reinforcement, learning from human feedback, or RLHF in language models, the paper explores various alignment strategies for video generation. What are some key technical approaches that have been successful in image generation and are now being adapted for the complexities of video?
Yeah, there's a whole suite of technical methods being explored for adaptation. The paper mentions reward backpropagation, where the gradient of the reward signal is directly used to update the parameters of the video generation model. Then there's reward-weighted regression, or RWR, which basically biases the model towards generating outputs that receive higher reward scores. More sophisticated reinforcement learning techniques like DPO-based policy optimization and PPO-based policy gradients are also being investigated. And interestingly, there are even training-free alignment methods that aim to steer a pre-trained model towards better outputs without requiring extensive fine-tuning. The overarching goal of all these techniques is to leverage feedback, much like RLHF and language models, to guide the video generation process towards producing more desirable results.
The research in this paper specifically focuses on applying the direct preference optimization, or DPO algorithm, to flow matching in video generation, resulting in a method they've termed flow DPO. What's the fundamental technical idea that underpins this flow DPO approach?
The core technical insight behind Flow DPO is to directly optimize the flow-based video generation model to align with human preferences by reframing the preference learning problem as a supervised learning task. Instead of first learning an explicit reward function and then using it within a reinforcement learning framework, DPO directly compares the predicted velocity fields for a preferred video and a dispreferred video, as indicated by human feedback, and adjust the model's parameters to increase the likelihood of predicting velocity fields that lead to the preferred outcome. This direct optimization approach has shown promise in terms of stability and computational efficiency compared to more traditional RLHF methods, particularly in this context.
They also investigated flow RWR and noisy reward guidance. Could you break down the fundamental technical mechanisms of these two approaches, specifically as they are applied to flow-based video generation models? How do they influence the velocity predictions?
Sure. Flow RWR, their adaptation of reward-weighted regression, employs an expectation maximization-based approach. Essentially, it assigns weights to the training data samples based on the reward they receive from a pre-trained reward model. Samples that are assigned higher rewards exert a greater influence on the updates to the velocity prediction network during training. So better examples guide the training more strongly.
Makes sense.
Noisy reward guidance takes a different tack. It directly modifies the predicted velocity field based on the gradient of a reward function. By slightly nudging the predicted velocities in the direction that the reward function indicates will lead to a higher reward, even in the intermediate noisy stages of the video generation process, it subtly guides the generation towards more desirable outcomes. A key aspect here, which is quite clever, is that they also train a reward model that can provide meaningful reward signals even for these noisy, partially formed video representations.
Okay, we've covered a significant amount of technical ground regarding the challenges and the proposed solutions. Now, let's delve into some of the key findings and technical insights presented in the paper. One particularly interesting result is the comparison between using score regression and the Bradley-Terry model for training the reward model. What were the crucial technical observations from this comparative analysis?
Yeah, the most significant technical observation was that the Bradley-Terry model, which, again, is designed to model pairwise preferences, consistently outperformed the score regression model. This was particularly noticeable in scenarios where the amount of available training data was limited.
Interesting. Why is that?
The researchers suggest that this advantage arises because pairwise annotations inherently excel at capturing the relative differences between videos. Even in cases where two videos might receive similar absolute quality scores, humans can often still express a clear preference for one over the other. The BT model effectively learns from these subtle relative judgments.
And they also explored the Bradley-Terry model with ties, or BTT. What specific technical advantage does this extension offer over the standard BT model, which typically only considers strict preferences?
The technical advantage of the BTT model lies in its ability to explicitly handle instances where human annotators indicate that they have no preference between two videos a tie. The standard BT model usually just discards these tie annotations.
Right.
By incorporating an additional parameter that models the probability of a tie occurring, the BTT model can learn a more nuanced and generalized decision boundary. It becomes better at distinguishing between video pairs that are truly indistinguishable in terms of preference and pairs where a preference does exist even if it's not overwhelmingly strong. This leads to a more robust reward model overall.
Another intriguing concept they introduced is separation for decoupling in the context of multi-attribute reward modeling. Could you explain the technical rationale behind this and how they actually implemented it? It sounds like they're trying to isolate the different quality aspects to get more targeted feedback.
It's exactly right. The underlying technical rationale is to prevent unintended interference or coupling between the different reward dimensions, especially between more general attributes like visual quality and motion quality, and more context-dependent attributes like text alignment. You don't want the text score bleeding into the motion score, for instance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Their implementation involved a clever use of separate, specialized tokens within the input to their reward model for each dimension of preference they were evaluating, VQ, MQ, TA. By strategically placing these distinct tokens before or after the video and the text prompt in their input template, they could effectively control which parts of the input the model primarily attends to when predicting each specific reward dimension. This helps ensure, for instance, that the visual quality score is primarily influenced by the video's visual content itself and not unduly affected by the specifics of the accompanying text prompt.
That's a really insightful way to isolate those different factors. Now, turning our attention back to FlowDPO, the paper highlights a key technical detail concerning the KL divergence constraint, denoted as BACFRID. What was the significant finding regarding the impact of using a time-dependent buffer versus a constant BAF in their experiments?
Yeah, this turned out to be a critical technical finding. The initially derived formulation of FlowDPO utilized a time-dependent KL divergence constraint, BAF, which decreased in magnitude as the noise level in the video generation process decreased. However, the researchers empirically discovered that using a constant value for BAT1 that remained the same regardless of the noise level actually led to significantly better performance in aligning the model with human preferences.
Really? Why would that be?
Well, Their hypothesis is that the time-dependent Moore imposed a much stronger constraint during the later, cleaner steps of the generation process. This inadvertently restricted the model's ability to fully learn the desired alignment towards the end. A constant mayor, on the other hand, provided a more consistent level of regularization throughout the entire generation process, which seemed to work better.
And what were the key takeaways from their ablation studies where they systematically varied the type of reward model used and the inclusion of those separate tokens we just discussed for decoupled reward modeling?
The ablation studies largely corroborated their main findings. The Bradley-Terry model, with ties, BTT, consistently demonstrated strong performance, particularly in its ability to accurately identify instances where human annotators expressed no preference those ties. Furthermore, the use of separate tokens for each reward dimension consistently led to improved overall performance of the reward model compared to using a single shared token, lending strong support to the idea that decoupling these different aspects of video quality and alignment is beneficial.
Finally, how did the flow DPO method perform when it came to aligning the video generation model in both multidimensional preference scenarios and in the single-dimensional case of just focusing on text alignment, especially when compared to other techniques like supervised fine-tuning, SFT, and flow RWR?
Okay, so in both the multidimensional alignment task and the single-dimensional text alignment task, Flow DPO, specifically when implemented with that constant might, showed significant improvements over the baseline pre-trained model. It also outperformed both supervised fine-tuning and Flow RWR.
So quite promising then.
Very much so, but with a caveat. It's crucial to note that when they experimented with the original time-dependent byte for Flow DPO, it unfortunately led to a phenomenon known as reward hacking. This is where the model achieved high reward scores according to the evaluation metrics, but produced videos that were actually degenerate or otherwise undesirable to humans.
Ah, okay. Not what you want.
Definitely not. The constant might version appeared to mitigate this issue while still achieving superior alignment with human preferences.
And what were their key discoveries regarding reward guidance, specifically concerning whether the reward model should be trained on clean, fully formed video latents or on the intermediate, noisy latents generated during the diffusion process?
Their findings indicated that for reward guidance to be effective, the reward model needed to be trained on these intermediate noised video latents. A reward model that was only trained on clean, fully generated video frames failed to provide meaningful gradient information that could effectively guide the generation process during its earlier noisy stages. Essentially, the reward model needed to understand and evaluate the video even in its partially formed states to provide useful guidance towards a better final output.
This in-depth technical exploration of aligning video generation with human feedback really underscores the intricate engineering challenges involved. The creation of large-scale, high-quality preference datasets, exemplified by the one introduced in this paper, coupled with the development of increasingly sophisticated reward models capable of capturing nuanced, multidimensional preferences, appear to be absolutely essential steps in pushing this rapidly advancing field forward.
Precisely. And the adaptation and refinement of alignment algorithms like DPO and RWR to the specific architectural characteristics of flow-based video generation models, along with the innovative technical insights they've uncovered, such as the benefits of the Bradley-Terry model with ties and the strategy of decoupled reward modeling, provide incredibly valuable directions for future technical research in this dynamic area.
And those very specific findings, such as the critical importance of using a constant KL divergence constraint within Flow DPO and the demonstrated effectiveness of reward guidance when employing reward models trained on noised latents, offer concrete technical guidance for researchers striving to further enhance the quality and human alignment of AI-generated video content.
Absolutely. Moreover, the introduction of VideoGen Reward Bench provides the technical community with a much-needed rigorous benchmark, specifically tailored for evaluating progress on these cutting-edge video generation models. It's poised to become an indispensable tool for future research and development in this space, I think.
Definitely. We hope this technical deep dive has provided you with a clearer understanding of the current frontier in AI video generation. For those of you interested in delving into the finer technical details of the algorithms, the architecture of their reward model, and the specifics of their experimental setups, the full research paper offers a wealth of information. You can find a link to it, as well as pointers to other relevant research on our webpage. So, thinking ahead from a purely technical standpoint, what do you see as the next major breakthrough that's needed to truly bridge the gap between AI-generated video and the rich, nuanced visual experiences that humans find most compelling?